Welcome to the Sharpe Way. Yes, I'm Larry Sharpe here again, Monday evening, 8 to 10, trying to entertain you to the best of my ability. You guys got to help me out by joining this program this evening. If you want to join the program, go ahead and call in 573-427-5463. Give us a call, and you can ask questions of me or my awesome, amazing, super cool guest that I have this evening, and that is the one, the only. He is a blogger. He is a journalist. He is a Reason magazine at-large editor. Super cool guy, and he really knows the Czech Republic more than anyone I've ever known. The one, the only, Matt Welch. Thank you for coming, Matt.
Thank you for correctly identifying me as a blogger. That's all I really want. There was at the 2004, I want to say, Democratic convention in Boston.
Mm-hmm.
I was hanging out with Dave Barry, which is one of the perks of my job, is that every 4 years I get to hang out with Dave Barry somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
And
he's brilliant, by the way.
He's hilarious, super libertarian.
Yes.
I'm not supposed to say that out loud.
Yes.
And small L. And he back then bloggers were all the fad.
Yes.
And so that was the new media story going in there. It's like, this is the first convention that had bloggers.
Yes.
And so he saw me and he said, "Hey Matt, how does it feel to be a blogger?" And I was at this point in my life 35 years old.
Mm-hmm.
I had been doing journalism since I was 18, and it felt great to be a blogger. And I just, from that point on, and including at that convention, when people talked to me, I just assumed that they were spelling it wrong, and I thought, and I internalized it as booger.
Booger.
So, like, this is the first booger-covered convention.
I love that. Yes.
In major party history.
Well,
2004.
Well, if you had a booger-covered convention, you definitely would make the news.
Yeah, see, right?
So, yes, it's good either way. So, yes. But you also have your own podcast.
Yes, two podcasts. So there's the Reason podcast.
You are cooler than I
am. My
am.
Primary employer. We have the Reason Editors Roundtable podcast, which I attempt to be the point guard on with Catherine Maggie Ward, the editor of Reason, Nick Gillespie, my fellow editor at large, and Peter Suderman, who is, Lord knows what, articles editor or some damn thing. But anyways, we talk about Monday morning, here's what's going on.
There we go.
And we argue with each other about that. And then I also, in a more drunken way, am a co-host of a less regular but possibly more slurry podcast called The Fifth Column with Michael Moynihan of Vice News, but hosted primarily by Camille Foster.
Gotcha.
Dear friend, Free Think Media, and Anthony Fisher.
People, please support those podcasts, but also support mine. And you can support mine too if you want to. You can head over to patreon.com/sharpeway and give whatever you can. If you like this stuff, please let us know. Help me out. Put a couple bucks in there. Get a cool t-shirt. Get a cool mug. Enjoy. I want to change, if I could, a little bit. You do consider yourself a journalist, really, as we're joking around, but you really do consider yourself a journalist. And I know while you definitely aren't a big L libertarian, you watch the libertarian movement closely.
And party
closely. I'm worried, and I'm worried for a very specific reason. I look at 2020, and whoever wins the presidency in 2020, for the sake of argument, it could be Trump, obviously, but for the sake of argument, we're going to say Biden. Who knows who Democrats will pick? Argument's sake, Biden. If Trump wins, what happens to the country? If Biden wins, what happens to the country? Either way, right? If Trump wins, half of our country is going to say, the Russians did it. Oh my God, right? If Biden wins, half of our country is going to say, it was the deep state. No matter what, it's going to look like half of our country is going to believe that our president is illegitimate, regardless of either one of those outcomes. I'm concerned that this is the worst we've been in, at least my lifetime, for sure. That's my feeling. Am I exaggerating? Am I not?
So the worst of my lifetime exercise is always interesting and worth doing. I think I'm a little bit older than you. I'm 51. I was born in 1968.
Yeah, you're like maybe 5 minutes older than me. I'm born in 61 also. I mean, 68 also.
68 also.
Yes. So we're the same age.
So
I just look better than you is why.
That's
only
not
difference.
a lot.
Only
even
difference.
A little
Yes.
bit.
Yes.
So the 70s super duper sucked. 1968, the year of our birth, more Americans died in Vietnam that year than have died in every war combined ever since.
100%.
So there were a lot, we were shooting a lot of good people.
Yes, we were. Absolutely.
Not
Yes.
just necessarily at war, but like Martin Luther King got
Yes.
assassinated. There were riots that could be seen from space.
Okay.
In Washington D.C. So it really sucked. But the 70s also sucked. I mean,
Yep.
I was walking here. We're kind of in the Lower East Side of New York, and I was having some kind of PTSD flashbacks because the first time you're a New Yorker, I'm a Californian, so I was sheltered growing up, and all we knew about New York was Escape from New York and other documentaries that were made.
Cool guys like Kurt Russell
in the period.
Yes.
And I had never gone east of like Vegas in my life, and then drove cross country, spent a few weeks here, and then flew to Europe. But 1990 was that year. I was 21. There were 2,242 murders in New York. I think
remember.
last year there was 200 and something.
Yep.
And
I remember how bad it was.
we're recording this. Right? We could walk to Tompkins Square Park. That wasn't an option,
Right.
In 1990, you could try
Yes.
to walk to Tompkins Square
If you
Park.
had 4 guys who were packed, you might make it.
You might get beheaded, which is
Right.
something that happened.
That's correct.
That
Yes.
summer while I
Yes.
was here, there
I'm
was just a
saying
light
you
beheading.
might make it. I didn't say you were. I wasn't guaranteeing things. I was saying you might.
So there were moments that were bad, and
Sure.
but also political moments. I mean, the early 70s were a lot of people. This is after the best and the brightest generation had absolutely screwed up in Vietnam,
Sure.
With the surveillance states and a bunch of other stuff, and a lot of people who had been kind of idealistic, new left Democrats in 1964. By 72, they're like, screw it, let's go blow up some cops.
Absolutely.
There were hijackings right and left. There were domestic terrorist groups all over Western Europe.
Right.
There was a Cold War, for crying out loud. There were missiles pointed at one another. So I want to check myself before I wreck myself on kind of unusual amounts of pessimism that I share with you about the current moment.
You just
But
like cubed me. Well done.
I didn't mean to. I
love that.
No, I share your pessimism about
Yes.
this. I wouldn't say that's half and half of the country. It's more like the 1/3 and the 1/3 of the country are just so dug in right now. And then the people kind of scattered throughout, they either choose a side or not, or they just kind of feel this free floating sense of, I was,
Yes, I completely agree. I did a 4-day trip just over this weekend in upstate New York, and I see it. I'm with you. Go ahead.
There's a clench. I talk forever. I was thinking of, so I covered the Ralph Nader 2000 campaign.
I was a Nader supporter then.
Which I voted for him
so did I.
despite covering him.
Yes, so did I.
And having a lot of misgivings about him, but such was my disillusionments back then. But he was like selling out Madison Square Garden, and a lot of weird stuff was happening, and he got 2.7% of the vote. It was a real phenomenon. So I got to be hanging out with the people, his entourage, which included Patti Smith and her boyfriend.
Didn't know that. Is that right?
Michelle Schacht, Tom Tomorrow, the cartoonist, his real name's Dan Perkins. Anyways, Tom, I've always found it to be a sweetheart of a guy, and I like his cartooning. I saw him on Twitter, and I hope, Tom, if you're watching this, don't take this the wrong way. He's lost his ever-loving mind. He had like the series of tweets that was based on Sean Spicer being on Dancing with the Stars.
Wow.
And he's like,
People, this is not okay. We've got to stop this normalization. You got to contact everybody. You got to clear check your Time Warner.
this is not okay. Do you understand? This is not okay. It's like, dude, it's just Sean Spicer
And it's just
in a
Dancing
green
with-
blouse.
Yes, it's no big
You
deal
gotta
at all.
like. There's a lot
Yes.
of problems going on, and maybe that's like indicative or pointing in some direction. But
No, it's not. No,
or
it isn't.
It's just Sean Spicer.
It's just Sean Spicer
embarrassing himself in a blouse.
That's all it is. It's a guy who has no future trying to have a future.
But
that's all that is.
The problem that I see and have felt in my bones since Trump kind of escalated into our lives, and the reaction to that, and even the rise of Bernie, who I don't loathe in the same way that I loathe Trump, although I'm getting kind of sick of him, to be honest with you. And he's rent control for everybody, like he's just crazy.
The 1%.
Look, it's the same thing every
Yes,
time.
absolutely.
But no, to see the response to all this, and to see especially what's happening in both Western and what we used to call Eastern Europe, all these kind of populist convulsions, the kind of rough neoliberal consensus, which is like the worst word. I mean, even today, Pete Buttigieg is saying neoliberalism is the problem. Like, dude, I thought that you were the poster child for that. But anyways, we had sort of like a rough agreement, very rough. Wasn't filled with a lot of day-to-day agreement, but that, hey, let's all kind of trade together. Let's reduce tariffs if we can.
Yep.
Let's sort of be nice to each other and
Yes.
hopefully not have too many wars, although there's going to be more wars than we should. But like, it was all sort of imperfectly stumbling in a direction. It was the theory of the case. That theory has blown up, and there's nothing that has replaced it yet. So far, it's been mostly a tantrum / corrective, because a lot of what it has done is expose the way that all that stuff was kind of coasting without democratic legitimacy. You didn't check in on the people. You got to check in on the people. You can't just sort of have an operating system that kind of goes.
Right. You have another issue here, and that is you're finding people who are basically fighting against sameism. Right? We don't want a global government. We don't even want a federal government. We don't even want a state with localism. And I think part of that is fractured media, right? I think that's one part of it. But it's also an idea that you don't know who I am, right? I want to feel like I'm special. Look at politicians now. The best politicians are doing things like Trump. He's tweeting, right? Or Yang, who's hanging out with people and surfing, right? Or people like that who are touching the people, who are touching them and being human and saying, I know you, I get you, I'm holding your hand. Bill Clinton won because he shook all these hands. That he was the guy. The
George
idea
W.
of
Bush
having,
actually had that talent. We don't think of it, but I've seen him in a room absolutely destroy the room with shaking everyone's hands.
Yes, and calling them nicknames.
Learning a new nickname for them.
He was the nickname guy. Yes,
the one time I was in a room with him, I was like, you're not going to shake my hand. You're not going to give me a nickname. And
did he?
I hid behind somebody.
Oh, nice.
Like
well
a
done.
man.
Well done. But my point being, the idea of having someone who the world sees as elite, if that makes any sense, I think that concept, people are starting to reject it. I think what Dave Smith was talking about this, he was talking about the idea people are fighting against the center, right? They want to pull to one side. They want to pull away from things because things just aren't working. They aren't going right for them. They aren't seeing things getting better.
And also, there is a real sense, and I mean that, like, not as a sense, but as a reality, that you don't have a say in the decisions that are made.
Yes.
That's a bad dollar. I mean,
Absolutely.
I saw this. My wife is French, and so I lived in Europe for 8 years, so I have a little bit of connection to France and some other countries. And whenever French people or anyone else gets super stupid and conspiratorial about America, it's rooted in because America is doing this thing that I don't like.
Right.
Probably my government is going along with it because America is so big it gets to do what it wants and we're kind of scared of it. Or maybe even it's France, so they'll go, no, I think it's wrong. So they'll go against it. But the way that that particular kind of like conspiracy or worldview operates is that we don't have responsibility for our own affairs.
Yeah.
And that is bad.
Yes.
That is whether you need to, whether it's illusory, whether it's whatever, if you are not as a sort of a governing system deriving your consent from the governed, they're gonna
Look, I teach
smite
this in
you.
business. I mean, I do business classes, what I do for a living during the day when I'm not doing cool stuff like this. I'm actually teaching people things just like this. And one of the things I teach in leadership is when you have a meeting, you don't want to walk in for a meeting and go, I'm the boss. Here's my idea. Don't you love it? And then everybody goes, yes, boss, we all love your idea. And then it never works because no one actually cares. It wasn't their idea. They didn't feel heard. The most important thing in a meeting is everyone is heard. They don't have to be right. It doesn't even have to be their idea. But if you won't take the time to hear them all, they're not going to be on board. And that works in politics too. It's just leadership, right? If people aren't hearing or feeling like they're being heard, they're going to not support you. Even when I was running, I had people who didn't like me, but all of a sudden they heard me and I would go to their town and they would go, oh, that guy actually listened to me. I disagree with everything, but I'm going to vote for him.
I mean, I'm sure
they would vote for me even though they disagreed because I actually listened to what they had to say and I gave them an honest answer, even though they didn't like that answer.
There's some of us who work in journalism who enjoy the sort of game of seeing how long an initially super hostile response to something that you've written or said or done can be turned into a, oh my God, like you're my best friends, can I send you some cookies? Yes. And oftentimes, this is especially true in newspapers. It's less true now in the era of social media because people just want to be nasty,
right?
And they're more used to the interaction, at least in the sort of the dart throwing way. But you write something for a newspaper. The newspapers, I'm from LA, so the LA Times at its peak was just this colossus. It had 3,000, 4,000 employees. It was the biggest newspaper in the country. The last thing that they ever wanted to do is to talk to the little people.
Yes,
and so the little people would sort of sit there and type their kind of strangled reactions to things. And then always very polite and always, thank you for your letter and et cetera. And just the act of that, it was so different and startling.
Yes.
One thing that you said, I want to sort of twist or take issue with somewhat in that, yes, people want to feel like they're in charge of what they're doing, but it's not necessarily a local feeling. Right, like I think one of the ills or one of the pathologies of our era right now is that your neighbor damn well knows who Nancy Pelosi is and Donald Trump, and they might know, depending on how much they're interested in it, like, an Adam Schiff or a Mark Meadows or these characters who are on a national stage.
Right.
The local politics is evacuated. Like, so few people can name their congressperson or city councilman or Lord knows whoever is providing or making decisions about their public education of the kids, because and it's part because of the sort of clench that we all have. We're so like on edge with one another about what happens nationally, that we've lost the muscle skill of just having normal social interaction with your damn neighbors.
I think you're right now, and the point I was being is we feel like it should be local, but we don't actually do it, right?
Yeah.
And we think that the guy up top who we want is the guy who cares about my local community when he or she probably doesn't, right? That
couldn't
isn't the
find
issue.
it on a map.
I never forget this. This is a very important thing that really landed for me when I was campaigning. I was up in North Country, New York, and there was a farmer, and the farmer was explaining to me how he had a 6th-generation farm, right? He had his farm and his family for 6 generations, and he was getting ready to lose his farm. And I was like, oh my God. And then he asked me a question. And you would think, well, what's the first question this guy would ask me about losing a 6th-generation farm? The question was, what do you think about Trump?
Yeah.
Wow, you're going to lose your farm. And no matter what, I'm running for governor. So Trump's president. If he loves Trump or hates Trump, that doesn't change. And Trump's not going to help him either way. It doesn't matter. Who could help him? A governor could help him. That could actually help him in this state. Especially because I had a farm plan, which would be even better. I actually had a plan for farmers. So I actually had a plan for that. And he didn't. He was, to your point, he was saying up here, because this is how I judge if I can trust you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? That's how I judge that. Or they use a wedge issue, right? Immigration, abortion. They use a wedge issue.
Whose side are you on in this thing?
Whose side are you on? And therefore I can trust you.
Yeah.
If you say the wrong answer here, whatever else you say is irrelevant. I'm not going to pay attention to that, because obviously you're just a plant or an evil person.
And now look, remember how Cuomo ran for re-election. What were his ads about?
All about how I'm going to stop Trump.
Yeah.
That's it.
It was Trump. It was Trump,
Yes.
Trump, and more Trump.
Yes, but the worst, the Republican wasn't any better. He was just going, Cuomo's corrupt. Cuomo's corrupt. That's what we're saying. We knew he was corrupt. Right? I travel across the state now, and I ask people, Democrats, do you like Cuomo? No, nobody likes Cuomo. And then Republicans get mad at me and go, why do they keep voting for him? Because they're not going to vote for a Republican, man. They hate Republicans more.
I mean,
that's it. They hate
it's like
Republicans
to try
more.
to explain to people about de Blasio, like,
yes,
New Yorkers hate him more than they hate Trump.
That's correct.
And he wins by 40 percentage points.
Every
How is
time.
that possible?
How is it possible? Yes.
New York's weird, man.
Yes, it is. We are so afraid of the other, right, that we'll vote for our guy. Fine. I hate our guy, but the other guy's way worse.
But also we had, in California, you people go to hell. But
you live in New York. Now you're one of us now.
I know. It's terrible.
Yeah,
I go to the local education meetings all the time.
Just because you
awful.
like the Angels doesn't mean you're not a New Yorker.
No, I mean, Democrats basically had a lot of Republican mayors or independent mayors and Republican governors or independent governors for a long time, because there was a sense of, well, God, yes, we're all Democrats. They do this in Massachusetts all the time, too. It's like, okay, everyone's going to be a Democrat. Great. Let's get a Republican mayor or a Republican governor in this case, because there's got to be some check on the system, because you don't want to go full Dem.
Yeah, but look, in New York State's gone full Dem.
Yeah.
New York City's gone full Dem. They've just done it. But even years ago, how it worked was a Democrat in New York City was a socialist, right? And then a Republican in New York City was a regular Democrat. That's what actually it was. I mean, you ran Republican because you weren't prepared to be socialist. So you said, I'll run Republican. Even though I'm a Democrat, I'll run Republican anyway, just have a different party, right? You just do it. But you look at New York City Republicans, they're really close to Democrats. Or traditional Democrats, maybe not now. The AOCs of the world are not really kind of what we are now, right? What Democrats are now in that regard in New York City. And some people in New York City don't even like AOC. You find that also. But the Democrats in New York City, Find a Republican besides in Staten Island. I mean, that's about the only place you're going to find
There's
Republicans.
little pockets of Brooklyn, but not
Yeah,
not my
there.
pocket.
Exactly.
No, they
Yes.
had the DNAinfo.com back when it was still going force. Had a great, like, almost block by block map of voting in the 2016 election, and it's amazing. Like, my entire my neighborhood, I think, went 91 or 92% Hillary Clinton.
Yes.
I think Gary Johnson came in second. And then Donald Trump, like, it is, and you know, they color code it all, and it's just like the deepest possible blue, and then just little bits of red here and there. But the thing that is kind of pathological about it is precisely how that focus goes crazy. Like my local city councilman, who's actually conscientious. I disagree with him strenuously about 1,000 things, and but he puts together meetings about the Gowanus Canal and all this kind of crap. He does stuff. Yet half of his communications are about, like, you know, we have to stop Betsy DeVos once and for all.
Yes.
It's like, dude,
absolutely.
You're my city councilman.
Yes.
Can we talk about the damn potholes and, like, the Rogue F Express and the stuff that, but he's not wrong to do that. He's responding to the incentives of the political marketplace, which are, we want to hear about this thing for precisely the reason that you elucidated, Larry Sharpe.
But isn't that the reason why we want that third party? I'm clearly biased, and I don't care that I'm clearly biased. I want that third party because the third party will change that. And why will it change that? If we have a powerful or at least viable Libertarian Party, then they will have to come up with better Republicans and Democrats. They just have to do it. Why? Right now, I can just go, I'm blue, I'm not red, so you vote for me no matter what. And they do. Right now, again, across New York State when I was running, half of the Republicans in New York State didn't know the name of the Republican candidate, but voted for him anyway because he had an R by his name. He could have been a terrible candidate. He was a terrible candidate. But he could have been a terrible candidate. It didn't matter, right? Cuomo's a terrible governor. It doesn't matter. But what if there's a real libertarian in the race? And here's my proof this is true. In New York State, both the Conservative Party and the Republican Party leadership both fell after our election. The results showed that the people were just tired of this. They were tired of losing, tired of how bad they were statewide, and the leadership fell. There's new leadership now in the Republican and Conservative parties in New York State, and I take 100% full credit for that. Why? Because they've been losing for 16 years and nothing ever happened. There was not even a chance of them losing leadership. There was no challenge whatsoever. This year, all of a sudden, gone, both of them. And the leadership of Scope, one of the Second Amendment groups, gone, all gone right after the election. That's Libertarian Party.
I wonder,
showing power in this state and embarrassing them to where they go, you know what? We have to actually be what we say. We can't just keep lying.
I want to believe, as they say, and I don't know particularly this issue. What I wonder is there's a really interesting piece in the Washington Post over the weekend. 40% of the Republicans in Congress on Trump's inauguration day are either gone or are retiring. 40%. That's a pretty short period of time.
Yes.
I mean, there was a big wipeout in the midterm election. A lot of factors went into that.
Yep.
But still, 40%
That's
is a big number. And if you see at a lot of the state GOP levels, particularly in early primary states, you see kind of like longstanding Republicans kind of washed out and replaced by Trumpists.
Yes.
I mean, because when Trumpism came on the scene, there weren't a lot of people like that.
That's
out there.
true.
Jeff
Absolutely.
Sessions was a bit like that. Paul LePage up in Maine was probably the most Trumpist type of guy. Chris Kobach in Kansas, terrible human being, was also a bit Trumpist. But there wasn't a lot of Trumpist infrastructure here. So I wonder, I don't know anything about New York, but I wonder if some of the leadership changes throughout the country in general are like how the Republican Party has generally responded to Trump, which is with an initial obvious visceral shudder of revulsion, like, oh, this goes against the half dozen things that we used to say that we cared about for forever, especially when the Democrat was in charge, to like, oh, I still want my jobs.
Right.
So, okay, I'm Lindsey Graham and I love Donald Trump.
Yeah.
Which is crazy. I wonder if people are just changing their spots ideologically and like creating a Trumpist architecture because the Republican Party has to become something. And this is another reason to get to your sort of sense of pessimism. What happens after Trump? I don't think that people forget how everyone behaved.
I think this could be, and I'm going to use, because I am a military guy, I'm going to use a military analogy. Trump could be, for the Republican Party, it could be Gettysburg. Or it could be Stalingrad if you're going World War II. It doesn't matter. It's the final battle that looks like you're going to win. And then once you lose it, the war is really over, right? If the South's marching on to Gettysburg in 1863, was it? 1863, they're marching on Gettysburg. They're feeling, we're invading the North. This is going to be awesome. But once Gettysburg's over, the South probably should have surrendered at that point. The war was already over for them. Of course, they're going to keep fighting. I understand why they were fighting, but they probably should have surrendered at that point. There was no way they were going to win at that point. Once the Battle of Gettysburg was over, that was it. When the Germans lost Stalingrad in 43, they should have just surrendered. I understand why they kept fighting, but they just should have surrendered. The war was over. They were never going to win, right? At that point, the elites knew the war was over. You're fighting for other reasons than just to win the war, because you can't win it. You're hoping for a better peace, right? You're fighting to hope for a better peace because you know the war's already over. My concern is this may be what Trump is. This may be the end for the Republican Party. And I say that because the country is going left. If you look at any measure, you see they're going left. And I say it all the time. The biggest reason is urbanization. 80% of all Americans live in cities now, something like that. It's some huge number. I don't know if that's the exact number, something like that. And more are moving, right? They're rushing to cities because after 2008, there was no real recovery except in cities. And about 20 U.S. cities are responsible for like 80% of all the jobs in the country. So everyone's rushing to cities. They rush to cities. They become left. It's natural. We live on top of each other. Multicultural, transient, beg for government to be our referee. You find us to become more left. It's just happening. Where does the Republican Party go? Does it just become more left? You see that in New York State. The Republican Party is becoming more left. You see it. And they're trying. You see the people they ran. The Republican Party last year in the gubernatorial race ran a lieutenant governor who was anti-Second Amendment. You know, the SAFE Act in New York State, for those of you who may not know, the SAFE Act is an anti-gun law, or I guess you might call an anti-Second Amendment law. She literally said, doesn't go far enough. This is Republican. The Democrats are supposed to say that. That's what they do. I get that if you're a Democrat. This is Republican, right? We go to a debate. I'm the only guy who says red flag laws are not required. The Republican says nothing. He's the Republican. He says nothing. So I feel like that's what they're doing now. Does that mean the Republicans just become Democrat light? I don't know what the answer is once Trump goes away. Did they replace Trump with another one?
It's an interesting, I'm sure they would try, but it's a conundrum. And I think there's something about blue states and what happens to the minority party, which is instructive. I mean, the go-to analogy that a lot of people are assuming will be true or is true already for the national GOP is what happened to the state GOP in California.
Yes.
We forget now, but California was a Republican state.
Yes.
The Los Angeles Times was a Republican king-making newspaper. They chose Richard Nixon to be someone to back.
Ronald Reagan out of California.
Ronald Reagan out of California. There was the motto on the LA Times where I worked for many years was true industrial freedom. They got blown up by union terrorists like in 1919 in one of the most famous acts of domestic labor terrorism in U.S. history. So it was not unusual to have Republicans around. Pete Wilson was the governor back in 1990, was up for re-election again in 94, I believe. And if I'm getting some of the dates wrong, sue me, but I think that's correct.
Don't sue him.
After the end of the Cold War, particularly where I'm from, Long Beach, California, kind of in the South Bay of LA County, experienced in a really negative way the peace dividend of the end of the Cold War because everyone's dad was an engineer, meaning aerospace. There was 400,000 aerospace jobs. I grew up right next to McDonnell Douglas, which I think their peak employment around 1987 when I was a teenager, 86, they had like 85, 90,000 people out there just cranking out
planes. You look at that too in Long Island and a bunch of places. Yeah, absolutely.
Their last plane went off the line, I think like 10, 11 years ago. I went and had a look at it. There's nobody there. It's now owned by Boeing. But like an incredible collapse of like the biggest industrial thing. And of course, it was artificial on some basic level. Like, you know, it's the federal government fighting the Ruskies.
It's a jobs program. Foreign aid jobs program, Cold War jobs program. Absolutely.
You know, they absolutely did create a lot of very interesting things there for sure. And there's a whole airplane and aerospace culture that even predates the Cold War there. But whatever, those jobs kind of went away. There was, and because of that, for the first time in 4 decades, that's a long time, real estate stopped going up.
Yeah.
So housing prices, which were supposed to go up forever, and you can go out of high school, get a job like twisting lug nuts on the airplane, and like a good job with the bennies and the whole thing, and you can buy your cheap house. Like it was a great deal for people, and almost overnight, in between 91, 92, 93, it went bad. And then if you also remember just kind of all the horrible things that were happening in LA,
yes,
in that little period, there were just fires and OJ and earthquakes and all this, like in a concentrated period of time, stuff was going pear-shaped. So
NWA came out.
Well, that was the good part. But so what is the like logical response? What is the thing that most people blame?
Government.
Mexicans. They blamed Mexicans.
It's gotta be government. Come on.
It was amazing.
Are you telling me they're not libertarians? Okay, fine. Mexicans.
No, I remember a very good friend of mine from high school. Super smart guy. I think valedictorian. Went to one of the better universities in California, and I was back in '91 and sort of saying, "Hey, what's going on back in the hood?" I was visiting from Europe. And he's just like, it's all these goddamn Mexicans. And it's like, no, it's the end of aerospace and it's the end of a 40-year boom. And like, it sucks and it's hard to do, but it's not the Mexican who drove away the aerospace jobs. So Pete Wilson at that moment as governor realized there was a meal ticket there. And there was a Proposition 187, who at this point, I even forget what Proposition 187 did, but I think it was taking away state benefits and welfare benefits from illegal immigrants and some other stuff too. And he had a famous TV ad, a picture of like a Mexican mom and like 2 kids running across a freeway saying,
I remember that.
They keep coming.
Yes.
And people freaked out. The entire political class is like, oh my God, this is objectively racist. Pete Wilson, who had been a moderate Republican mayor from San Diego, kind of a nondescript kind of character, rode this ballot initiative and rode these politics to a pretty stunning re-election victory in 1994. And there were a lot of think pieces right then, as you can imagine there have been since Donald Trump got elected, like, wow, this is the future of the Republican Party. Nope. Yes. This was Gettysburg. And ever since, California has not been Republican.
That was my idea about the Gettysburg. You get it completely. Look, guys, if you like what you're hearing, it's important that you support us. Head on over to patreon.com/sharpeway. Do us a favor, throw a couple bucks there so that we can keep this kind of conversation going. It's important. And if you do it right, you can actually get a mug or this cool shirt. Yes, you can get this cool t-shirt. Not the exact one I'm wearing, but one just like it. You can also get a Reason t-shirt also. Yes, you could. You can get a Reason t-shirt too.
I'm not sure how, but
not at Sharpeway. Not there, but you could get one. I'm sure you could. So yes, please do that. And if you want to join the program, 573-427-5463. All right. I want to bring up something that you just mentioned. We are different as Americans when it comes to government and blaming government. I was joking when I said blame government. I blame Mexicans. I was kind of joking. What I mean by that is in many of the more industrialized, or if you want to call them more developed countries, they have a head of state and a head of government, right? 2 separate people, right? Head of state, they have Queen of England is the head of state and the prime minister is head of government, 2 separate things. And if they're separate, we don't have that. We have one, ultra powerful. It's different for us. He becomes, in many ways, maybe one day it'll be a she, but right now he becomes almost like the symbolic leader and ruler, almost like a king or emperor, because we don't have a king or emperor. He is both the state and he is the head of government. On top of that, did I ever tell you this story about when I was in Japan and people were talking to me about burning flags?
No.
All right, good. I'm glad. I told you so many stories. I didn't want to tell this one again. I was in Japan for many years. I was teaching English over there. And when I was there, people would say, Larry, why in the world do you Americans get so mad when they burn your flag, right? No one burns Japanese flags because we don't care. They can burn Japanese flags all day. It's not going to make the news. We just don't care, right? It doesn't matter to us, right? So no one ever burns a Japanese flag. But you burn an American flag and you Americans go nuts. You want to start a war over it. Why? I said, you don't understand something. In Japan, you are bound by many things. You have a similar language. You all have a similar school system. You all watch the same movies. Most of you have the same religion. Most of you have, read the same books in high school. Most of you watch the same TV shows. You're bound by many things. You're bound by tradition. You're bound by culture. You don't require symbolism. It's not necessary for you to recognize that you're all Japanese, to recognize that you're all the same, to have that feeling of camaraderie and to keep you together. You don't require it. Americans don't have that. We don't all go to the same schools. We aren't all the same religion. We don't watch all the same TV shows. We don't do anything the same. We're very different. Symbols are critical for us. Without symbols, we have nothing. We're not even a country without symbols. Symbols are everything for us. That flag makes us together, not our religion or the books we read or the people or the language we talk or the country we came from. That's all different. So we need symbols. That's why that flag matters so much. But on top of that, the president is also a symbol. Why do I bring that up? Because in most industrialized countries, when something goes wrong, the government falls. They blame the government. They go, you're the head of our government, and it didn't work. It's your fault. God save the queen. Right? God save the queen. But you, head of government, you got to fall. We have both. So when we have crisis, we jump to our leaders. We hope the king will save us. Think about 9/11. It's a perfect example. Happened on Bush's watch. Bush was like, I'm the greatest guy in the world now because I'll bomb people for you, right? In the case of crisis, Rahm Emanuel, was he the one who said, never let a good crisis go to waste? Right. Was that him?
Yeah.
But yeah, he's right, because we look to our leaders almost like kings and emperors, even though we're not supposed to be that way. But we do compared to other countries.
Yeah.
When we have a crisis, we cry for our government to save us, protect us, send us off to war, do this thing. Others don't do that.
I think that's true, and at the same time, we're experiencing an almost 70s style disillusionment. I mean, the last time that we really felt that sense was the Iraq War.
Sure.
And now, majority or close to majority people correctly believe that the Iraq War is a mistake to get into, and Afghanistan is incredibly unpopular and all this kind of stuff. So like those things that we all believed in 90%, and it always irks me when people say we need to get back to that sense of shared patriotism and 9/11. And I don't mind getting back to some elements of it that were actually nice. I recall even at the time when everyone was freaked out about potential anti-Muslim violence breaking out, in America, I was tracking the bestseller lists first almost a full year after 9/11. And it was all like Americans were reading books about the Middle East and Islam. They're like, I feel like I should catch up.
Yes, exactly. Right.
And there was actually a really good
What's
book.
this Shia, Sunni? What is this thing? Yes.
I wrote a review, I think, for Washington Post or Wall Street Journal or something, a book by Gustav Niebuhr, I think the nephew of Reinhold Niebuhr. He was a religion reporter who, after 9/11, had the beat of going and talking about how America was engaged in the sort of spasm of anti-Muslim violence, and he had to realize several months going in, it's like, oh, the story is actually kind of opposite. America is experiencing this really interesting moment of interfaith dialogue and understanding, and there's aspects that kind of maybe were submerged, then came out like during the 9/11 mosque discussions. And some of this, I mean, certainly has been reflected in Trumpian politics and the Muslim ban and some of the uglier edges of his immigration policy. So it's not like it went away, those feelings, but we're capable of these kind of nice moments too. However, most of the things that we associate with 90% really like this in a moment of crisis end up really sucking. It's going to be the Patriot Act.
Yes.
It's going to be the financial 100%. Crisis.
Yes.
No one had that rush of feeling like, oh, this is going to be great, these bailouts. The only one of the bailouts that was actually ever popular at all was Cash for Clunkers, because it was
I remember that.
It was a $4,000 check. Who doesn't like that?
Right.
I
yes.
like that.
That's right. Yes. Well, I want to grab a call. This is a guy who wants to talk about press. Since you're a reporter, maybe you'll be able to deal with that press and that it causes violence. This is Jonathan from Westchester. Jonathan, are you there? Oh, hold on, Jonathan. We're going to get you in a second. Jonathan, are you there now? That's a nice cough, Jonathan. You all right?
Oh, shit. You guys are early, man.
We're there, man. And it's okay. You can even say shit. Man. It's fine.
Ah. Damn it. Good evening, Larry.
Damn
Hey,
it,
Matt.
shit. You are starting off strong. Keep going, brother.
Oh, shit. Well, thank you both for this is terrible starting. This is why everybody sounds silly when they pick up on the phone.
This is the reason.
Goes from, yes, it is. But beyond that, thank you both for your continued contributions to the liberty and freedom movement.
Awesome.
You both have made impacts in my life. I enjoy volunteering on your campaign, Larry. And
Oh, thank you.
I enjoy reading Matt's articles.
Thank you.
Quick question, kind of related to what you guys were speaking of earlier. Matt, do you think, since you was and still part of the press, do you think it's still a fourth tentacle or arm of the government? And if so, how can they stop the radicalization of the citizens that are reading or watching that news?
Well, I don't think that it is the Fourth Estate's job to change the behavior of the electorate, change the behavior of the readers.
Cool.
I'm not in full agreement with my co-professionals on this issue. There's actually a series of books. For a long time, I was covering the media beat. And I would have to read all these kind of woe is journalism books that come out every year. And boy, there's so many, and they're always dreary. I think Jill Abramson might have killed off the entire category this year with an error-strewn, plagiarized book on these topics. But there's a theory of journalism. I forget exactly what it's named, but it's basically that journalism is this essential arm of democracy, and that journalists should see what they're trying to do is to sort of make change, sort of effect change through citizens. And I'm like, you know what? Okay, that's what you want to do. I'm not going to tell you not to do what you want to do, but that's actually, I think, a not helpful way to imagine one's work, even if you, like me, are working in opinion journalism or sort of ideological journalism, even if you openly root for certain outcomes to happen on a policy in particular front, which I do and have never apologized for. But I don't wake up in the morning trying to make new libertarians or to try to engage. Yeah, you do. I do. We had an interesting talk with us on Dave Smith's podcast. It's actually kind of a fundamental and interesting difference between people. I don't see myself as an evangelist, and part of the reason is that I think that road madness lies. Like you start to your essential functions as someone who's trying to discern and understand and truth as it exists in the world, as opposed to how you would like truth to be.
But hold on, but he's asking
difficult.
that question. But how can you, if at all, repair it? Right? These are your brothers and sisters in journalism. Is there something that we or you or any of us could do to shift more people more towards your style of journalism versus the guy on the left who just goes, yeah, I'm a journalist, but, Trump's horrible, Trump's horrible, Trump's horrible. And the other guy going, yeah, I'm a journalist, but Trump's great, Trump's great, Trump's great. How do we get people to not do either of those two?
Well, okay, one bit, and this is important, and this is where a lot of consumers of media, I think, do it badly, is that reward people for good behavior out there. Be a conscientious reader and seeker and viewer of not just alternative viewpoints, but just like good journalism. Like the woman, what's her name? Julie Brown from the Miami Herald, who advanced the Jeffrey Epstein story so much, like changed the trajectory of how things went because she just through the dogged nature of her reporting. Seek that out. If you have a Twitter account, say, boy, that was good. There are occasions when people, or like even people who are doing a good job questioning. I was looking back at the 2016 early presidential debates. And I think the first one in the Democratic side was a CNN debate moderated by Anderson Cooper. And I rewatched some of it and mostly read the transcript. And for a piece I was writing for Reason, kind of like, what do we learn about the first debate in a debate season, right? But my God, he did a great job. Like he came right out and just challenged the living hell out of all of the candidates, particularly Hillary Clinton, right out of the gate, calling into question her very questionable veracity and honesty. And how should we trust you after
Hillary
X, Y,
Clinton?
and Z?
What?
Yes.
Okay.
And reading this in 2019, I said to myself, I am going to go give Anderson Cooper a high five on Twitter right now.
There we
just
go.
Because
I love that.
it's 3.5 years later.
Yes.
But seriously, like when you see good work, tell someone, hey, that's good work, because they're going to want to hear that more.
Sure.
And instead
So
of
reward good behavior is what you're
reward
actually
good
saying.
behavior,
Good.
and also just be a good news consumer yourself. That will make all of that stuff better.
Gotcha. Jonathan, did that answer your question?
Sweet.
Awesome.
Yes, it did.
Thanks
It
for
did.
calling in, brother.
And,
I appreciate
one
it.
last one for a joke.
Go ahead.
One last for a joke.
Do
Matt,
it.
On a hot dog, mustard, ketchup, or we've all voted at hot sauce.
Mustard.
There, you know what this is.
I will take
Mustard, ketchup, or hot sauce.
mustard.
I've already
All right.
voted mustard. You know that.
Yes.
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 See, I told you
If
you're
it's
a
really
New
up
Yorker.
to, if it's really up to me, it's going to be guacamole.
Oh, you're a hipster. Look at you. Oh, my God. Boo. Boo.
Thank you both. Thank you
All right.
both.
Thank you.
Thank you,
And
Jonathan. I
have a great
appreciate it.
night.
All right. I want to grab another call if I could. This one's kind of interesting. I want to talk to someone who wants to discuss the Soho Forum. I don't really
Nice.
know what that's all about, but we were both there, so maybe that's a cool thing. We're going to grab Christian from New York. Christian, how are you, sir?
Hey, Larry, I'm good. How are you?
Awesome.
And Matt as well.
Hey, Christian.
Hope you're doing well. I had a question. I don't know if either of you have seen it, but there was recently a Soho Forum debate, hosted by Gene Epstein with Dave Smith and Nick Sarwark, the national LP chair.
We were
I don't know
both
if-
physically
had either of you
there.
seen that?
We were both physically
well,
there,
then you
and we
probably saw
both participated in a post-forum roundtable discussion on Dave Smith's
Yes, I'm waiting for
podcast.
that to come out.
And we both just saw Dave Smith walk in outside in the
That
door
is
of the
correct.
studio that we're in.
This
So-
show is done in
This
Dave
is the
Smith's
gas-
studio. Yes,
So it's the Gas Digital Studio.
it is. Yes.
Yeah.
So the question was, I don't know if Dave Smith's looking in, it might be harder to answer, but essentially, with his point of view being that if someone isn't anti-war, they should not be put up for election by the LP.
Mhm.
Do either of you, and I know you said Matt wasn't really a libertarian capital L guy, but
Yeah.
if there was one particular purity test that you would say makes it, you can't put him up at a national stage because it would kind of taint the brand. I was wondering if what you guys thought that might be from your perspective.
Good question.
I'll defer to the Libertarian in the
No. To be clear, I don't actually have a purity test. I have a percentage test. It's different. I think that most mainstream politicians, if we're going to bring them to the Libertarian Party, even most mainstream people, if we're going to bring them to the Libertarian Party, we are by the way, Dave Smith just walked by putting thumbs down.
Yeah.
So he's not happy with you at all. Anyway, but I think I have a percentage test. What I mean by that is I think that most people are going to want some type of government in general because they're afraid and they're worried. An example I give often is I remember people going to a Libertarian Party meeting, and they go to a meeting, and the guy's like, well, you guys don't want to get rid of NASA, do you? I mean, NASA's cool. I mean, went to the moon, right? And there were people in the party who attacked him. We should have SpaceX and NASA steals my money. Like, no, fine. You know what? NASA, that's the last thing. We'll deal with that last. It's okay. Let's keep NASA for
Right.
now. There are other things we can work on. So my idea is, are you anti-war? If you say yes, but I think maybe World War II was okay, or I hear things like that often, you can still be libertarian. That percentage to me is okay. If you think World War II was an okay war, I'm not going to throw you out of the party because of that. I'm not. I don't think we should
It's
be
just
in.
like
I don't think we should be in any wars.
in the future would be an issue, though, right?
Yeah, well, unless someone said, again, if someone actually said, and if it was a politician, if they said, I don't want any regime change wars, and I don't want to go to war unless our allies go to war. I don't like that. I don't want us having allies that will put us into war. I think that's not the right answer. But would I disqualify a candidate because they said that? I wouldn't. As long
I
as you're...
think that's close enough.
Yes, that's my point.
Non-regime
It's
change.
it's a percentage.
I agree with the percentage within that category. And
Correct.
It's less of a percentage, but more of a different types of what you probably shouldn't be supporting.
Yes. If
So,
someone said...
I agree with you there.
If someone said, for example, I'm against the war on drugs, but I think we should keep heroin illegal. I think all drugs should be legal. But if some guy's going to say, I want to keep heroin, but all the rest can be legal, I'm not going to disqualify him. Does that mean I would support that candidate over others? No, it doesn't mean that. I might not. Depends upon the other candidates. But do I disqualify them because they think heroin should be illegal? No, that doesn't disqualify them in my eyes. So the way I look at it is it's not a purity test, it's a percentage test. If he's like, well, all I could see is medical marijuana, disqualified. That's disqualified because that means you still want the war on drugs. In my eyes, you're disqualified, right? But if you go, let's get rid of them all except for heroin, you know what? We'll deal with that. But not just that. If I bring them in and we talk to them, here's what I guarantee you. Within 2 years, he'll want heroin also to be legal because he'll be around us. He'll hear us. He'll see what we talk about. He'll understand we have the moral high ground. I will get him the rest of the way. I've told people this often. I'm a recruiter. That's what I do, right? Matt was just saying, I don't wake up every morning trying to get into Libertarians. I literally do. Like, that's what I'm thinking about when I wake up in the morning. That's what I'm thinking about. I just spent 4 days on the road trying to get into Libertarians. And by the way, I did 3 press conferences with people who changed their party to Libertarian, right? People who are running for office, already in office, who changed their party in New York State. That's happening every single week in New York State. So, and some of them are not perfect Libertarians. So to answer your question, it's not a purity test. It's a percentage test.
If I can put my journalism hat on for a moment, one of the things that I can't help but noticing during the most emotional of the arguments that Libertarians, believe it or not, like to have amongst themselves, whether they're capitalizing or not their L, is that there is a common, I believe, misperception about Johnson Weld being some kind of pro-war ticket out there. I covered them as much as any journalist in the country, have interviewed both of them, spent a lot of time with both of them, both before, during, and after the election. At the beginning of the election, the opening bid was no regime change wars. We need to get the hell home from Afghanistan and Iraq, and so on. What Bill Weld would say then mostly is, and because he did have a bit of a hawkish and certainly sort of a multilateral pass, as a lot of hardcore Libertarian Party activists would point out, my God, he was on the Council for Foreign Relations. Are you kidding me? That was like the one. Right. He supports the United Nations. But when things would get tricky, he would say, I deferred to Gary on these issues, and I'm learning. I interviewed him a whole bunch of times in 2017 and also on election night on 2016, when he might have had a drink or two. Maybe I did as well. And I was surprised to hear, because, I mean, he had a very contentious, particularly the last week and 10 days of the campaign, pissed off a lot of Libertarians by going on Rachel Maddow and some other behaviors. Then I presumed he was gone. I presumed he was already in the Republican Party by that time. And he's like, no, the Libertarian Party is where it's at now. And in fact, up until the moment that he switched back, he was like the leading contender, or the one, not the leading necessarily, but the one doing the most kind of spade work on a presidential campaign. He
supported my campaign in New York.
He said to me, you know, what does the Libertarian Party need to do? He said, we need more Larry Sharpe.
Yes, absolutely.
But I would always ask him, how did running as a Libertarian change you? Change your sense of policies? And his number one answer in every forum, whatever, that I asked him is, especially on foreign policy and on regime change wars and getting the troops the hell home. I somewhere on the interwebs, or at least maybe on a Twitter exchange, I have a thread of like 12 or 13 different quotes that he's given me about war over the last 3 or 4 years, and it doesn't fit with a caricature of the war-loving Bill Weld that you hear sometimes.
Yeah, well, I agree with that, and the point is, the more people we bring in, we do turn them, right? Or they leave, right? One or two things happen. They become more libertarian.
Both.
Or, yes. In his case, both. Yes. Or they leave. So Christian, the reason why I don't have a 100% purity test is I honestly believe, because I've seen it myself, because it was me too. I was one of them, right? I was that same guy. So as I started to learn more and hear more, I became more libertarian. I think many people do. I don't want someone to come to the party only once they're perfectly libertarian. I want them to come to the party once they cross, as a general rule, I go my 80-20 rule, right? Once you're 80% libertarian, that's when I want you. I'll get the rest. I will get the rest out of you, no worries. But not just that. I was joking today, before we came on with Dave Smith, I said, there are a lot of people who've come to me and then gone to him. Because he's much more hardcore than I am, right? I'm much more of a nicer, friendlier. Yes, yeah, there we go, perfect. Yes, I'm much more of a nicer, friendlier, open. Come on in, open tent libertarian. I know that. I'm the recruiter.
Right.
I bring them in.
Libertarian pragmatists versus ANCAP, basically.
Yes, and then people find Dave Smith because of me, and they go all the way down. And yes, that's amazing.
Down.
Yes,
Felt
all
that
the
a
way.
little bit judgmental there.
Well, because
Down.
I am cooler.
Join us, Larry.
I am cooler. I'm sorry, just the way it is. But yes, but Christian, thank you so much. I hope that answered your question.
Yes, you did. Thank you very much. Have a good one.
Awesome. Have a good night. Guys, if you want to be on the program, please do me a favor. Pick up that phone and call in 573-427-5463. I'll have you on. We'll answer your questions and hopefully tell you some funny jokes. Maybe not so funny, but we'll tell you some jokes anyway. We're talking about Governor Welch. Someone's calling in about Governor Welch, so I want to bring that caller on if I can. Dude. We're going to bring on Tom from Albuquerque. Tom, how you doing?
How you doing, guys?
I'm doing great. Oh, you didn't start swearing. Nice. We are winning already.
Didn't hock a loogie either.
How you doing, Matt?
I'm doing good. What's going on?
Hey, first thing, because you said earlier in the show that you should always compliment people. Larry, I want all the listeners to know I have gone back and watched the complete videotape of the 2016 vice presidential debate in Orlando with you and Alicia and Bill Wells.
Oh, yes.
When I was watching it, I was impressed. When I've watched it a second and a third time, that is one of the best demonstrations of libertarian principles in a debate that I have ever seen.
Wow.
Anyway.
Wait, from Bill Weld?
And of course, you.
From Bill Weld?
I'll draw the line there. I mean, he was kind of. I was asked by certain people in the campaign how I thought Bill did after that, and I told him he sucked. But everybody else I thought did just a slam bang job on it.
Well,
and of course, Matt, what can I say about you and Nick? I mean, you guys are carrying the torch out there in the media, and I always love and impressed by what you say. Anyway, my question.
Yeah.
Speaking of the Boston Brahmin, I kind of came in on your broadcast here a little bit late.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Came on a little late. Maybe you guys talked about it, but what are you guys' thoughts on Bill calling for the summary execution of?
It
President
wasn't
Trump?
summary. There'll be due process. Then they'll execute him. Come on. I'm saying it's not summary. It's
I wrote a bit about it, mostly sort of a news-ish bit about it today. But my conclusion of it, because it was not just him, it was all three of the Three Stooges, as Trump is calling his competitors, Mark Sanford, Bill Weld, and Joe Walsh, who I'm interviewing tomorrow. All three of whom I kind of like. Joe Walsh I never had time for until he started running for president, and now I've met him a little bit, and I still don't trust him as far as I can kick him. And I'll tell him that in person. But like I like all three guys, and if you look, whenever they talk about policy, for the most part, which Joe Walsh is very much trying not to talk about, but they're stressing stuff that I agree with: debt and deficits and tariffs and the usual smorgasbord of stuff. So I like them fine. I don't mean to disparage at all there, but calling. I don't think that the proper response to Trumpism, to the kind of set of politics that he represents, the style of how he comports himself, the looseness of his lips. I don't think that the best and most effective or just morally grounded response is to call for the execution of your political opponents. Again, call me a squish. I might be a squish on this.
Maybe you're squishing a little bit.
And many other things. And maybe I haven't fully internalized the true lesson of the 2016 election, which is that my preferences and $35 can buy me a pair of $35 shoes, maybe. So the things that people respond to in politics, as consumers, is much different than what pointy-headed, opinion journalists based in the Acela corridor like to see about their mores of polite discussion.
Look, Tom, I got to tell you the truth here. It's a brilliant move on his part. It just is. He was going nowhere. He was doing nothing. Now he's calling for execution, and now Matt's writing on him. So kudos to Weld. Well played is all I can say, right? He is love him or hate him, he is still a savvy politician, right? And he saw he was going nowhere, and he did this, and now you're talking about him. You're calling into my show, and Matt's interviewing him. Yes, this was exactly the right move for him, because in reality, I think he realizes, and maybe I'm wrong here, I'm not speaking for him, I'm giving my opinion. I think he realizes the odds of him winning in a primary against Trump are very slim. Give or take 75 to 80% of registered Republicans still support Trump. Most Republicans still support Trump. Not all, but most do. Surely not enough for him to come in with a victory. However, if he can win, say he goes to New Hampshire with this open primary, right? He's got an open primary. Here's what I know from Democrats. Democrats love any talk of physically harming Trump. Boy, do they love it. It's like red meat. He's like, give me more. Get Trump. They love whatever time Biden says he's going to beat up Trump. I mean, his polls go up. They just love it like there's no tomorrow. So I think, does this. Democrats get behind him. Now all of a sudden he's in New Hampshire. Open primary. His hope is that he can get around the other two stooges, is his hope, by being this way, dismiss them, and he can have an amazing good showing in New Hampshire. Really good showing, maybe even win, but he's hoping obviously, but just a good showing enough to where he can either hurt Trump bad enough to where he has a chance of maybe Trump not winning. People can, if Trump actually loses at something, that will break his aura of, Teflon. So his hope is to break that aura of Teflon, or he can always, once he does well in New Hampshire, come back to the Libertarian Party and try to run as Libertarian and say, look how well I did against Trump. Yeah. Guys, you can give me
good luck
the nomination again.
Bill.
I think he can do either of those two.
I dispute the notion that Bill Weld is a savvy politician. Simply that he's over his last 25 years running for competitive elections. He's on a bit of a losing streak.
Okay.
No, the deck is stacked so incredibly against him, both in terms of public support. So Donald Trump's last Gallup poll, favorability among Republicans is 91%.
Wow, I knew it was over 80, but 90.
Ties the highest mark of his presidency. There's been now half a dozen polls that include the Three Stooges and Donald Trump. Their combined total compared to his, he's up 70 percentage points against the field.
Wow.
Combined.
Amazing.
Bill Weld raised in the second quarter of this year $688,000.
Wow.
After coming in and saying, there's going to be millions, and I know rich people and the whole thing. And so it does not look very good. And he started off, and I was up in New Hampshire when he was kicking off his campaign, spent some time with him. He started off very much stressing Trump's unfitness for office. The Mueller report was coming out. He pointed out that I was the one that hired Robert Mueller in the Justice Department. Fun fact, who is the only politician Robert Mueller has ever been on record giving a donation to?
Who?
Bill Weld.
No, is that right?
Absolutely true.
Look
100%
at that.
true. So he started from a position that Trump is unfit, he's crazy, he's this and that and the other. So there's only one direction to go, and that's kind of up. Exactly. So at some point, he's gonna. I think he runs the risk of coming off as hysterical more than anything else.
Right. Well, no. It's that, or what does he do? Right. If he doesn't call for his execution, what does he do? I mean, just sits there and just sits there. I mean, I don't know. There's a point, and this is an old military thing. Again, I'm going back to military stuff. When you're winning, you don't gamble. When you're losing, you gamble. He's losing. Roll the dice. What's the worst he can do? Still lose? Right? I mean, you're losing by 70 points. What's the worst that can happen? You're going to lose by 71 points? Doesn't really matter.
Yeah, I think his family's going to be in good standing no matter what he does.
Yeah, he's not going to be starving. I think he will not have to sell pencils on the street.
And Tom Albuquerque, does your last name start with an M by any chance?
You're spot on there,
okay.
Professor Welch.
Okay. Just checking.
Hey, Larry, I love this concept of your show here. This is a great idea. You're going to do it regularly, I suspect.
Did you miss? I had Lincoln Chafee on last week. I had Mike Tolkien on before that. Speaking of, I had Howie Hawkins on 2 weeks before that. Come on, man.
I was in Ireland. I was in Ireland the last 2 weeks.
You better get on my YouTube page and check my stuff out. The Sharpe Way YouTube page.
I was in Ireland. Sorry, I won't miss them from here on out.
That's what I want to hear.
Hey,
thank you, my friend.
One suggestion.
Please.
when someone calls in, all I hear is music. I want to hear the show. I mean, you guys are two of my favorite people. I couldn't hear the show, and I was listening to some Spanish music.
Thank you so much.
Good feedback. Right
that's great feedback. Thank you. No one else has told me that before. We're going to have to fix that. Thank you, my friend. I appreciate that.
Tom, come visit us in New York, bro.
Yes. All righty. So thank you, Tom. I appreciate that. Well, yes, look, if you want to be on the program, of course, 573-427-5463. And as Tom was saying, you want to support me? There's another way of supporting me. Not only can you go to patreon.com/sharpeway and donate so that you can get some cool swag like shirts and mugs, but if you donate enough, I'll actually come to you. Yes, I can come hang out with you. We'll sit in a diner. We'll drink some coffee. I'll tell you some cool stories about when I was in the Marine Corps, and I probably will make you laugh. Maybe not, but I'll probably make you laugh on top of it. This is not bad at all. If you want to buy swag, no worries. Go to sharpeway.com. Click on the swag button. You can just pick this up. This is a cool shirt. I got recognized twice today in this shirt. Once at a rest stop. No, not rest stop. A gas station in upstate New York, and once at the Roscoe Diner. I got recognized by a bunch of people. So they love the shirt. They know it's me. Come. And by the way, if you do recognize me out there, please. I had this happen all the time. They go, Larry, I didn't want to say anything. Please say something. If you recognize me, stop me. I'll shake your hand. We'll do some selfies. Life is good. Happens all the time. Please do it. I'm not bothered at all by it. I hope I'm so famous one day that I will be bothered by it. But currently, I'm not bothered by it. Take advantage of it and come say hi. And of course, check out my YouTube page, The Sharpe Way, the Facebook page, The Sharpe Way, Twitter, Sharpe Way, Instagram, Sharpe Way. These are all important things. If you support it, people see it, more people will come on. So I want to go back to, can we keep doing calls? Are we okay?
Yeah, lots.
Calls it is. I want us to do one more call if we can. Another gentleman who wants to talk about libertarians running in the GOP. This is an interesting one. This is Jules from Manhattan. Jules, how are you?
Hi, how are you?
I'm doing great.
I'm well. I've got the show on in one ear here, so I
Nice.
just lowered the volume.
Oh, thank you so much. I appreciate that. What's going on?
I'm building a YouTube channel.
Okay.
I've been working on it for about a year.
Okay.
I was in LA. I moved back to New York.
Mm-hmm.
I'm double dipping a little bit, working a little in real estate, but I'm very passionate about politics.
I like that.
And, libertarians, they can't win elections.
Aww.
And so I see Trump sort of restructured the Republican Party in his own image, right? And you've got Bernie Sanders kind of restructured the Democratic Party in his image. So it doesn't seem like you don't have to be a Republican to run as a Republican. So why don't libertarians just assume the Republican label, just be very vocal about what their opinions are.
I love that.
And then just win elections.
Let me talk about both of those things. The first thing you said is libertarians can't win elections. That's absolutely demonstrably not true. Libertarians do win elections, just not many of them. And they're almost always local, right? They don't win major elections. That's true. We haven't had a libertarian governor, libertarian president, senator, nothing federal. But we absolutely have one city council. We absolutely have one school boards. We absolutely have, here in New York City, we have Deborah Altman, who actually won a city council spot. So we do have education city council. So we do actually have people who are elected. It does happen. But it's only been local. And I'm okay with that, right? One of the reasons why I ran for governor, there were many of them, but one of them was to get ballot access for New Yorkers and to be that lightning rod for people. And I just did 4 days in upstate New York. I was as far west as Jamestown. If you happen to know where that is, that's closer to Cleveland than it is Albany. That's how far west I was. I did a press conference for a gubernatorial candidate who was a Republican who became libertarian, right? His name is Andrew, if I pronounce it right, Luizzo. And he's now running as libertarian. People showed up. We had signs. We did a go live. This was something that libertarians have never done. This didn't happen before. Then an hour later, I'm in Olean, which is in Cattaraugus County, which is one county over, right? Closer to Pittsburgh than it is Albany, right? So I'm there, and I'm there with literally 6 candidates. In Cattaraugus County, Libertarian Party is putting up 14 candidates. I'm not joking. 14. There are less than 100,000 people in Cattaraugus County. I think about 70,000 people in Cattaraugus County. How do I know that? I have no idea. I crossed New York State. So there's like 70,000 people in that county. So with that in mind, 14 people running, 3 are cross-endorsed Democrats, 3 are cross-endorsed Republicans, and 8 are libertarian only. So we are running, and some of them are going to win. Then I was also in Canandaigua, and in Canandaigua, that's by the Finger Lakes. I'm there, and I got a guy who's a sitting council member. He changed his party from Republican to Libertarian. That happened in Broome County, too. This is happening all across the state. We have over 250 people running in New York State this year, in an off year. Now, again, they're all local races. I'm not telling you we're going to win the governorship. I hope we do. I'm not saying that, but we are absolutely going to have people winning. Before this, we had less than 20 people running across the state.
Wow.
Now we have over 250. This is a movement, brother. It is happening. So that's the first part of your statement. The second part of your statement was, why don't we assume the Republican moniker? Because we're not Republicans. And when people do that,
right,
you know what happens? Let me finish. Let me finish. I'm going to cover it. Look at what happened to people who did it. Literally, Justin Amash started the Republican Liberty Caucus. He left it because he was able to do nothing. He was able to get nothing done. He was shunned. He was attacked. He was pushed. All this stuff. If he didn't have the strength of conscience that he had, he would just sit there and be ineffective. Sadly, there are more Republicans just sitting there being ineffective. That's all they do. They sit there ineffective. And to be fair with you, I was approached by the Republican Party in December of 2017 to be their lieutenant governor candidate. You know what I told them? I can lose on my own. And I've proven that to be true. So yes, I can lose on my own. I don't need you to lose. I can do that all by myself. And then when I lose the Republican, what do I become? I become an also-ran. Oh, who was that guy? A what? Now I'm popular in the libertarian world in New York State. As I just said, I literally get recognized in the street. I had a cop, I'm not joking, pull me over. Upstate, and I don't want to tell you what state, but it was upstate, it was right north of the city. Pull me over because he wanted a selfie because he saw me on Joe Rogan. That wouldn't have happened if I was some nobody Republican.
It's a good sign. And
yes.
They seem very optimistic. I do think
Absolutely.
that there is a movement and it's changing. But the libertarians need to make sure that, they don't get overwhelmed by socialism, communism. It's really cool.
No, it's a valid point
everywhere.
Yes.
And so they need to compete in the market.
I'm agreeing with you completely.
Theory.
And if you've watched what I've talked about, I am the only mainstream candidate. People call me a pragmatist or whatever you want to call me, but I'm definitely a mainstream candidate. I'm the only mainstream candidate that says I don't want to purge the radicals or anarchists in our party. I don't want that. That's a bad idea because you're right. If we purge them, we will become either Democrat light or Republican light, depending on how many people come across, right? We'll become that. We need them as the core of our party. We need them as the North Star of our party. I said that 3 years ago, and I meant it 3 years ago, and I still believe it now. I want to be the recruiter, but I want us to make sure that at our core, we're still about the core of the movement and core of the party. That's not easy to do, but there's a second piece, my friend, and you bring up great points. I just want to make sure we're clear on this. There's another piece here, Jules, and that is we have a very bad we've had and still in many places have a very bad culture in our movement. We don't have a culture of assistance. We don't have a culture of help. We don't have that. I am trying to do what the libertarian will do, which is I model the behavior that I want others to do, and I hope they actually do it. I lost, and I'm still out here helping others, raising money for others, doing press conferences. I use my YouTube page. I use my social media presence to pump up others. I literally ran a fundraiser for Dwayne Whitmer, who's running Western New York for Congress. I went out there to, Erie County? No, to Wyoming County. Wyoming County, which is by Buffalo. I went out there to help raise money for him. Every time I do an event, people show up, I let him speak. Right? I was out there in Tioga County, and I had Keith Price speak in front of me, and I pumped him up and edified him. I'm doing that because I want them to follow behind me into the same thing. If we start doing that, we'll help others. I had a judge in Sullivan County who's running as Libertarian, and I told her, judges, they're not able, they shouldn't at least, they're not able to call and ask for money directly. I said, I'll do it for you. That's legal. Let me do it. I'll be your fundraiser. Now, I'm not going to get anything for that. But I build out the party that way, and I show them how it's done, and I train them how to get it done right, and the rest will follow, and we'll build the right culture. We are the vanguard of this movement, my friend. I know where you're thinking, but I'm telling you, it looks bleak because we're the vanguard. But if you look across that field, I have broken a hole in the front line. if you flood through, we will overwhelm our enemies. We've got to flood through.
If I can just add a bit of more recent Republican history along the lines of what you were talking about, the subject of Tim Alberta's book, American Carnage, is basically how a weakened vessel husk of the Republican Party had been run by an out-of-touch establishment, kind of making the same exhausted Ronald Reagan platitudes for generations, found itself, like a lot of political parties, major parties find themselves, kind of ripe for a hostile takeover beginning in 2009 and 10. It was the Tea Party, and about half of the new Tea Party infusion that came into the Republican Party were some pretty interesting folks. It was Rand Paul, it was Mike Lee, it was Thomas Massey, it was Justin Amash. And I go to those four guys first because they're basically the last ones.
Yes.
There used to be a whole lot more a part of, I mean, the House Freedom Caucus had more than 30 members. Mick Mulvaney, 2015 in April, as a congressman and a member of the House Freedom Caucus, writes a Wall Street Journal op-ed talking about how it's immoral to add 1 penny to the deficit, and that if Republicans, who had just retaken the Senate, remember, they had only had the House for a while under Obama, but now they finally had the Senate. And he said, well, now that we have both houses of Congress, it is more important than ever to hold the line on spending, or else if we don't, then people aren't going to believe us. Next, they're going to believe that this was all opportunism. And this guy said, 30 months later, Mick Mulvaney uttered the phrase on national TV to sell Donald Trump's tax deal, "We need new deficits." He had said deficits are immoral, and now we need new deficits. And you see this across the zone. The co-founders of the House Freedom Caucus, which was founded in 2015, go look at their founding documents. Jim Jordan and Justin Amash and Mark Meadows signed. It's all about restraining executive power, especially making sure that investigations into the behavior of the executive branch have integrity, and that the executive branch can't be trusted to investigate themselves. What have Jim Jordan and Mark Meadows been doing the last 2-3 years? Is that the notes that they've been hitting?
Yeah,
I don't think that's what we've been seeing. So we did see a lot of people who were certainly libertarian friendly, libertarian-ish, come into Congress, and they did some really good things. Justin Amash came within 5 votes of defunding the NSA in 2013-14. They helped, in my estimation, greatly to dissuade Barack Obama from bombing Syria, which for me was good. Others have a different opinion about that. But they definitely had an effect. They had an effect on holding the line on deficits for a while, or holding the growth of government. There's a year-over-year almost freeze, and defense military spending went down year-over-year in some cases with the sequestration. So they definitely had an effect, and some of those people have become some of the more interesting people on criminal justice issues, which have gone in a good way under Trump, thanks in part to the spade work that they've done. However,
and Kim Kardashian,
who did great work and should not be sneezed at
Absolutely.
all.
It's true. It's true.
And the thing is, that grand experiment, and I know a lot of the people who are the architects behind the scenes thinking exactly as you are now, thinking about that in 2009, saying, hey, look, we can have all these insurgent candidates who are running against the establishment, quite literally, and we can change the behavior through incentives and primarying people. We can change the behavior and the character of the Republican Party. It worked for a while, and then it stopped working, and then Trump did it himself in his own way, which has very, very little overlap with libertarianism on occasion, on regulatory issues, except vaping and some other ones.
Trump, I feel like the thing is, Trump struggles with the truth, but he's also constantly fighting reality. And I feel like he's not someone that just spells out what he says in a traditional way so that there is an unpredictableness that goes along with it. But I think he's a piecemeal engineer. This is what Karl Popper, libertarian legend, would say, that if you're I think a lot of things that libertarians get wrong, which is what the communists get wrong, is I think a lot of libertarians are utopian engineers. They have the ideal image, and they're like, if we could just go straight for our ideal, right, things will get better. But they miss out on the step-by-step process. So they're opposing utopian engineers as opposed
let me cover two pieces
to pragmatic piecemeal engineers.
I think that the people you're talking about aren't running for office, right? The libertarians you're talking about are the ones who show up at the local events and scream at me. That's those guys. But the people who are running for office, I think the reverse is true. Most of those who are running for office understand the complication that you're not going to create a libertarian utopia tomorrow, no matter what you do. This country isn't ready for it. It just isn't. It's just not there. I live in New York City. We're nowhere near ready for this at all. But
libertarian utopia is not happening.
So yes. But can we move towards it? Of course we can. Can we change? Of course we can. But I want to cover two things of what you said. The first one I want to go on. It sounds like I'm just beating up Republicans. It isn't that. Democrats too, right? The thing about Democrats that we don't realize is, and this is particularly in New York, but throughout the entire country, if we don't turn Democrats, we can never win. Period. In New York State, we have to get better at talking to the left. The reason why we won't win as Republicans is you can't win as that either. You've got to win as a libertarian, right? Democrats aren't going to vote for Republican anymore. Republicans aren't going to vote for Democrat anymore. But both will vote for libertarians. I know that because it happened in New York State. I watched it. It happens all the time. How do I also know that? As I said, in Cattaraugus County, I got 3 people who are Democrats, 3 who are Republicans, 8 libertarians. They will vote gold. I've proven that. That's a fact that will happen. So we've got to talk best to them. Now, you're right. A lot of Democrats have moved towards the Bernie AOC style. AOC is literally my congressperson. Yes, I accept your condolences. Yes. But the point being is what they're actually looking at, most of these people, they actually don't want socialism. What they want is what is perceived fairness. That's what they actually want. If we can show them that you will actually get that with libertarianism and not with socialism, you will turn them. How do I know that? Because we have YAL and SFL. These are organizations in colleges that actually get youngsters to become libertarian. And I talked to Wolf Von Laer, who is the guy who runs SFL, and I asked him, and he said exactly that. He said, yes, Larry, they want fairness. If you show them that you can get fairness through freedom, if you show them that, they turn. And I've noticed in the libertarian movement, we tend to get people from the right faster, but they also go back faster, and more of them go back. We get them from the left slower, but when we get them from the left, they stay, and they are some of our best advocates. I want to talk to the left as much as I want to talk to the right, and we can. They're both broken. We can bring them to us. Now, when you talked about Trump, let me tell you who Trump actually is. He's a New York City developer. That's who he is. He has the personality, sadly, don't get mad at me, developers, of all of you. You're all the same. You're hardcore. You fight. You never say anything. Brand means everything to you. You fight because I'll sue you, and you always want an attrition, and you never stop fighting. You never say you're wrong because you get sued, so you always say you're right, no matter what, and if you just keep fighting, the other guy gives up, and you get your building built. That's what you do. That's who Trump actually is.
That's the New York image? That is, ugh.
That's a New York City developer.
That's not the whole image, is it?
No, for New York developers, that's the reality.
That's a New York City developer.
And also, you are constantly getting your hands grubby with government. Constantly.
That is correct.
What do you,
yes.
I mean, Donald Trump, among his many ways that he deviates from traditional conservative values, remember in 2015, there was a whole cycle of a kerfuffle about his attitude towards the disastrous Supreme Court decision, Kelo versus the City of New London. He's like, it's great. That was a great decision. That was the eminent domain decision where the City of New London took Suzette Kelo's house because they wanted to flip it to a developer that never developed anything. And there's a great movie out called Little Pink House.
I literally painted a pink door in Utica because of that. We had a pink door campaign in Utica because of the eminent domain issue. And by the way, if you look at that video, I actually painted a door. It's a video of me on Facebook, and also it's on YouTube.
How are your painting chops?
Terrible. Yeah. It took me 12 minutes to paint one door, and the video was literally of me 12 minutes painting a door because people thought I would paint a little bit of it and have someone else paint it. Nope, I painted it. Sorry, go ahead.
Trump defended that Supreme Court decision over and over again, and started talking about, it's terrible. These people have their little house, and they, you got to do a big deal in Atlantic City, and he's used eminent domain in a super nasty way, and thankfully the court stopped him on occasion. But that's who he is. That's the values that you get. Remember when Ted Cruz had his line about how we don't need more New York values, and people took that as being like homophobic or something. I wrote a column defending Ted Cruz. It's the only one I ever did. Not necessarily the intent of what he said, because back then, if you remember, the people running for had the biggest chance of winning were Donald Trump, former New York Senator Hillary Clinton, Brooklyn-born socialist Bernie Sanders, who talks like every old guy in Brooklyn, and then even Michael Bloomberg was still thinking about like, should he run, should he not? So that. Like, enough of the New York values, because it's not necessarily like your hoity-toity culture stuff. It's actually kind of the opposite. Is that all the way that we live here is I don't want to say unnatural, but it's different than the rest of the country.
No, it's unnatural.
You're on top of each other.
Yes.
You are definitely going to be elbowing each other in the neck on a daily basis, and you're going to have a way of talking that's really kind of rough, but also funny.
That's true.
Depending on how long you've been here, you'd be super competitive. There's pluses and minuses, but like the values that you get from engaging in the culture of New York City are not values that you would like to see transposed to the rest of the country at all, and vice versa. The values of Montana should not be imposed on New York City. That's just not going to work. But to have the entire field be a bunch of New Yorkers, bad idea.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. You look at, I mentioned that Cattaraugus County has about 70,000 people. In 1 square mile of Manhattan, we have about 60,000. Right. And for those of you who are listening or watching who don't live in New York, I want you to realize something. In New York City, this is not New York State, New York City, there are UPS truck drivers who their entire route is one building. Just think about that. The entire route is one building. He parks his truck and goes up and down elevators and stairs all day, then goes back to get more packages, comes back, goes up and down stairs and elevators. That's all he does. That's literally his entire route. That's unheard of outside of New York City. One more thing about New York City. New York City is the largest city in America by more than double. Right? By more than double. I think LA was 3.5 million, give or take.
LA's around 4, New York's around 8.
Yeah, and New York's around 8.5 now, but they're coming down. So by more than double, right? So it's a huge city. In our metro area, 16 million people. That's insane. It's a different way of doing things. And Trump is born and raised and fought and grew here. That's who he actually is. So I wanted to bring that up also.
I never forgave Trump for he chose Joan Rivers on The Celebrity Apprentice over Annie Duke. And
I saw that episode. Money. Yes.
You saw that episode?
I did. Yes.
It was ridiculous. She had raised more money than all the other contestants combined.
And Joan Rivers was such a biatch during that show, and she still got it. Yes, I remember that show.
It was just her star power, right?
It was her star power.
That was it. I've never forgave him for that.
Yes.
Which, fair enough, Joan Rivers is pretty awesome.
Just saying. Just I don't know. Anyway, so yes. Well, it's sad that I remember that show. I used to watch
sad that you both do.
I watched the original. I watched the first couple seasons of The Apprentice, and I do remember that. Yes. So I do remember that one when he rebooted it. So sad. Anyway, thank you, my friend. I appreciate that.
Thank you, guys.
All right.
Good night.
So if you want to join the program, no worries whatsoever. Simply give us a buzz, 573-427-5463. And if you want to support the program, if you like what you're hearing, if you're enjoying it, being able to reach out and touch us, it's awesome. Head on over to support us at patreon.com/sharpeway. You can donate $9, $48, 90 some odd dollars. You donate enough, I will show up and come to your event. Yes, I will. Donate a whole lot. I might even bring you up on the show. See how good I am? That's all you have to do. Support us. Or go head over to sharpeway.com. Hit swag, pick up some cool shirts and such. And of course, always support the YouTube page, the Twitter, the Facebook, the Instagram. All right. So he's talking about, the idea of being Republican, right? This is an issue that I deal with often. So many people think that anyone in the Liberty Movement is Republican. It's a common thing, but it really isn't true. I mean, if you look at the actual libertarians in the actual party, you will find a lot of them that have a lot of left, or traditional, I should say, left views. The common piece is they don't want to use government force to make it happen. There's literally a libertarian socialist caucus.
Granted, it's like 2 people, but yes.
Well, no, it's actually more because the best part is Howie Hawkins was on.
Yeah.
Right? And when he was on, I was asking about that. And he's like, well, I'm kind of libertarian socialist. What I found out from Howie, which I was surprised, is I don't think Howie's actually a socialist. What I think Howie actually wants is hyper-localism with direct democracy. And that's what he actually wants. He wants hyper-localism with everyone direct democracy. We're going to put up a stop sign. We all vote. Right? That's what he wants. Right? The town is all that matters, and everyone gets one vote. Are we putting a stop sign up or not? We're going to give Bob the ability to put up his fence. We all vote. I think that's what he actually wants, which is a little bit different. But I asked him about guns. I said, during the campaign, because obviously he was running with me against Cuomo for the governorship last year. I asked him about guns. I said, when it came to guns, you didn't really say much. Right? I know you're not really anti-Second Amendment. He goes, nah, but it wasn't a big deal. I didn't bring it up. He goes, I'm for guns. He's like, any socialist knows populists have got to be armed. Yes. I was like, hardcore Howie,
wow.
Get some. Yes.
That reminds me that, Bernie Sanders in his career in the 70s in Vermont was pretty pro-gun. Hillary Clinton tried to bash him about the ears and neck on this in 2015 and 2016, and he has since, I'm proud that I get a left rating from the NRA.
Yes.
But there is the old left, the old new left of the 70s, that was kind of part of it. It was a lot of localism.
Absolutely.
A lot of appreciation for kind of agrarian communal life. Bernie Sanders, I think, lasted about a day and a half on a commune before they're like, stop talking about the minimum wage. But like there's an appreciation for that people need to earn themselves, for revolution if it's
yes.
in the 70s, or just like, don't tell us what to do. We're going to have our own idiosyncratic way of life. That's been flattened out, I think, in the way that we're in the process of this great kind of political / geographical sorting that's going on here. So in order to have the identity of progressive or kind of just left of center person, you need to have all of these more or less these kind of basic attitudes, and if you don't, then you have to explain yourself awkwardly. And philosophically, those attitudes don't necessarily have to have anything to do with one another.
Yeah,
but that's just kind of like it's the set of traditions that have arisen and clustered around the Democratic Party among progressives, and Republicans and conservatives have their own versions of that. But Trump is a great challenge and kind of shaken snow globe to that. And per the previous caller, I think in general, yes, we're kind of clinging to those sets of ideas, and we're clinging to the identities, the tribal identity of X.
Absolutely true.
As strong as ever, at least among the people who are still kind of dead ending in both places. But what the ideological ingredients.
There we go.
Wow, I kept going back to constituents. The ideological ingredients of that are really kind of up for grabs, and the parties themselves are really kind of shallow and ripe for takeover. So what does one do with these sort of more marginal set of beliefs, and how do you attach yourself to a world that does consume politics tribally? I think that's a great open question that I certainly don't know the answer to.
What I found happening is because of this problem, as you say, right? There's individual groups are coming to me. For example, in New York State, vapors, right? The vaping industry is being crushed in New York State. They're rushing to the Libertarian Party because we're the only ones going, we got you, right? We got you. Fathers' rights groups who want family law, boom, rushing to us now. We're doing joint events now. That's coming to us. These are disparate groups who are just saying, why won't the government leave us alone? The Republicans won't stop and the Democrats won't stop. Come on in. They're coming to us, right? People who've had their license revoked for multiple DUIs and can never get a license ever again, even if they're clean. For 5 or 10 years, they can never get a license ever again. Those guys are coming to us, right? The Amish, believe it or not. Yes, the Amish Libertarian Society, right? They should be left alone. I was in Western New York, and I had a couple people coming going, the Amish, they're starting to talk about you, Larry. I'm like, I'm getting the Amish vote?
Is it because of Justin Amish?
Oh, terrible joke. Boo.
Thank you.
But anyway, so yes, it is. I think that a lot of them are starting to come to us. But something else happened. This is a story I want to tell. It's about Rochester. And I think when I tell this story, I start getting more people to us also, regardless of whether they were Democrat or were Republican. Upstate New York in Rochester, about 2 months ago or so, there was a mom, and I told her story on in Go Live form over the weekend. I want to tell it here now too. There was a mom who brought her small 3-year-old boy to work. I think it was at Tim Hortons, in Rochester. She brought him to work, and he fell in a grease vat or grease trap, and he died. Lost her son. There were basically two sides to this story after that. Side one was, what a horrible mom. Oh my God, why would she do this? Why would we put her in jail? There better be charges. She's terrible. That was side one. And for those people, shame on you that you would think that's the right answer. This mom has to go back home and tell her family and friends that she's responsible for the death of her child. She will take that to her grave. She will never forget that. She will be devastated. If she has a relationship with the child's father, it's over. If she's married, she's divorced. But not just that. She will blame herself forever. She wishes she was in that vat. There's no doubt she wishes that she was in that vat, and she wishes she was dead. You're going to put her in jail now? Whatever we do to her, we can't do it worse. She hopes she goes to jail and dies. She doesn't want to even survive. Of course not. How could you imagine anything like that? Luckily, there were no charges. But that was side one. Side two, there ought to be a law, even though there were already laws. This one place actually had I think it was a plastic cover. We supposed to have a metal. Every other place around still had metal. That was what they did. So what did the government do? Local government said, you know what? Let's send out inspectors now to inspect everything. And they started handing out summonses. They started handing out tickets. And all the restaurants in the area where no child died now paid. So they used a mom's grief and a child's death as an excuse for a money grab. And they did it. And they punished everybody else. Great. Still not done. Now they're going to have a new law. There's going to be a new law. There's going to be a new grate on this thing. Okay, a new grate when the old grates already worked. It was the one guy who was doing the wrong thing. So now there's a new law, and they're going to name the law after the child.
Of course.
Of course they are. So they're going to use that child's death and that mother's grief as a way to gain votes because they had whatever, Bob's Law, whatever the kid's name was. I don't remember the kid's name. Bob's Law. That's why we're going to do that now. That's the new thing. And I said, shame on them all, because no one asked the most important question. Why the hell did she do that? Why did she bring that child to work? And I'll tell you why. And we all know why. She couldn't get childcare. Now you might say, well, wait a minute, Larry, that's not her fault. She just stayed home. No, if you go back 30 years ago, what does she do? I can't get a babysitter. You give it to grandma, you give it to uncle, you give it to cousin, you give it to nephew, niece, grandpa, grandma, whatever, sister. They're not here in New York because we lose 150,000 New Yorkers every single year because our state is so horribly crushing and oppressive, it literally breaks up families. My mom died in South Carolina because she couldn't afford to live in New York and retire in New York, so my kids lost their grandma. So she lost hers too. Well, that's okay, Larry. Put them in childcare. Childcare has been regulated out. It's so expensive, right? Take it to a local church. You can't because churches used to have it. They can't anymore because of regulation. Now you can't even get a local church to do it. No one talked about that. That kid is dead because New York is oppressive. When I ran, I had an idea called child gardens. This was one of my policies. The idea was this. I know you have kids, right?
2.
Do you ever take your kids to a park?
Yes.
Awesome. If you take kids to the park one day, I ask you, do me a favor, Matt, take my daughter with you. You agree? You take them. Do you require a license for that?
I do not.
That's correct. No license required. You can take my daughter to the park if you and I agree. Why don't we replace you with a nonprofit? So now the agreement is now not with Matt Welch. The agreement is with the local VFW, the local church, particularly in poor communities, local black church, which is being destroyed, right? Maybe it's a local Knights of Columbus, right? Insert nonprofit there and make an agreement. Will you take my child in your backyard, the garden, and watch him there? I'll be back in 10 hours from work. But that's the agreement, right? Now we can make any agreement we want. If you take my daughter to the park, you might say, Larry, can you give me $5 for ice cream? Here you go, $5, ice cream, life is good. The church might say, here's what you got to do, Matt. Be here Sunday. And bingo's on Monday night, you're calling numbers. Deal. Take my kid. Whatever you want. The backlash I got was, but Larry, there'll be no background checks. Then ask them to have background checks. They can do whatever they want. It's an agreement you want. If you don't like it, don't do it. It's voluntary. But Larry, what about licensed childcare? It still exists. It's not going away. It gives you an option. If you trust your local church, your local VFW, or local Knights of Columbus, drop your kid off if you trust them.
Think about how broken we have to be so that this would even need to be proposed.
Yes! Exactly.
That's it's very distressing. I live in a wonderful neighborhood in Brooklyn. It's great. People are out on their stoops. You see people in the community. The local churches do their 2 or 3 little marches, dressed up with like the Virgin Mary on, wearing weird black things, and going. It's just like there's people out and about at all times. I saw some discussion on Twitter a couple of weeks ago. Someone was sort of talking about similar issues, like how often do you interact in any way? Like, do you go to a community meeting or go someplace where you might see someone who's a representative, or do, X thing that is actually like pretty super normal, like go to church or or whatever. And all the responses were like, maybe once a year. It's like, dude, really? I do that like once a day or like once a week, and I'm not outgoing. Like I'm really, I don't, I'm professionally outgoing, but I'm not a Johnny conviviality out there in the world. But like, I can't imagine living in a place where you're not interacting with your neighbors and local community organizations. That's normal.
So should be.
And it says something about kind of the crowding out of different people, of societies, of, you mentioned all the regulations that have to come with healthcare. I think in Washington, D.C., they were talking about how you couldn't like be a babysitter, couldn't do like the basic, unless you had like an advanced degree. Like, okay, I'm a college expellee, I'm a dropout, right? So I am not allowed to watch your damn 4-year-old. No, I'll watch the hell out of your 4-year-old.
Yeah, absolutely,
I will be fine.
Yes,
we can we can figure that out. But
New York State, you need a license to braid hair that costs $20,000 to braid hair.
Man.
Yes, you're totally correct. My point being, if I had won the governorship last year and I put that into place within 3 months, that baby's alive. That baby's alive. Nothing else we do saves that child's life. That does. That actually does. But we will continue to put more pressure on New York State. Families will still break up, and more kids will die. Moms shouldn't have to bring their kids to work. If they want to, they can. Nothing wrong with that. If they feel it's appropriate, go ahead. You're the mom. Make a decision. But you shouldn't have to. We should have a society where a mom does not have to bring their kid to work.
And we can, if I can repeat one of the half a dozen best headlines that I wrote or approved during my editorship of Reason from 2008 to 2016, dead kids make bad laws.
Yes, absolutely true.
Almost every single law named after a dead kid. And I know that sounds callous, and I'm sorry for specifically the parents of the individual kids. But the laws on the books are done by ambulance-chasing politicians.
Yep.
And rarely do they look at things in the way that you just did, which is kind of sort of work backward.
Yes.
What pathologies led us here? It's more of that punitive sense. Like,
yes.
I'm surprised that one of the options that you mentioned wasn't like, we got to punish this corporation.
Oh no, they're getting sued. They're already getting punished.
It's
yes.
There's this really kind of puritanical sense of punishment that arises in people, and That's not how you. I mean, sometimes you got to punch someone. I get that, but like, that's not how the whole thing gets fixed.
The issue is the goal shouldn't be punishment. Punishment might be a means to an end. The goal should be to end the behavior, right? That's the goal. End the behavior. If punishment's required to end the behavior, we're good. But if the goal is punishment, we're in trouble, and that's where we are right now. We're at a point where the goal is punishment, right? There was a South Park episode years ago where they had a character called Captain Hindsight, right? And Captain Hindsight would fly in when something bad happens and would go, "This should have happened, and we should have done this, and we should have done that." And we'll go, "Oh, thank you so much, Captain Hindsight." And in one of the situations, there's a burning building. Right, and people are literally burning to death in the building in the South Park cartoon. And he comes in and he flies in, and the firemen are all there. He goes, "This should have been built this way, and this should have been built that way, and we should have had this and should have had that." They go, "Thank you," and they all leave and let everyone burn to death. Because the goal is just to blame, right? The goal is just to blame and punish. It isn't to solve the problem, right? And that's where we are. And even South Park guys figured that out. Very libertarian, by the way. But they figured it out. And this is an issue we have to begin to stop. But we're not getting it. We're not, as you said, going backward, right? You look at the vaping industry, right? And they're doing in New York State, they're crushing the vaping industry, right? They're saying we have to stop these evil e-liquids, right? Because kids die from them. Well, the question I asked people when I went out this weekend was, can you please tell me the name of the store in New York that sold these horrible Juul pods? You know, can you please tell me the ones who sold them? And they go, yeah, no one. No store sold them that. What killed the kids was black market. That's what killed them. The black market did. The stores were doing the right thing. The stores literally are doing the right thing. They are making sure that kids don't buy it. That's why the kids are going to black market. They're doing the right thing. So what was the answer? Well, we decided we're going to punish all the stores. So our ban of the flavored e-liquids, what it literally does is it punishes those people who were doing the right thing, and the black market is going to be expended and rewarded for killing children.
Yes.
Literally, we are rewarding child killers, and we are punishing those stores that went out of their way to not harm kids. Not just that, there are about 700 or so vape shops in New York State. They're going out of business. That's give or take 2,000 jobs. Gone. Not to even include the people, the manufacturing, the wholesalers, the truck drivers that move that stuff. Gone. I was at a Government Blockchain Association event 2 weeks ago. I was emceeing one of their tracks in DC. And I'm down there doing the MC, and the conversation going back and forth. I'm trying to make the conversation go well. And someone comes up with this. Yeah, you know, we got to realize something. There's a lot of issues and problems. And one of them is, of course, you know, the business attrition in New York State. I got mad at that. You know why? Because they're not New Yorkers. I can say my sister's ugly, you can't. Right? I can say my brother's stupid, you can't say he's stupid. This is my state. You're not supposed to know that we're bad and say that we're bad. And they did. And I was annoyed at that. I was like, people who aren't even New Yorkers know we have a business attrition. And now we've got this vaping ban too. We threw out cryptocurrency. We're throwing out vaping. We threw out cannabis. And we've got 150,000 New Yorkers leaving every single year. And nothing's changing. It drives me crazy. And then when this happens, people still think government's not the problem. Government's the problem. People love New York. They just hate the government, but they love the state.
The logic of prohibition, it's amazing to me how much people refuse to learn the basic story of prohibition.
Absolutely.
What's weird is that everybody, with like one exception, can tell you the story of why alcohol prohibition didn't work.
Yes.
People like to drink too much, or too many people like to drink, let's say. When you make it illegal, that means the Richie McRiches, including like the politicians on Capitol Hill who had the supplier right there, they're going to get theirs, no problem. Everyone else is going to be black market.
Yep.
The black market mafias led by Al Capone are going to use a lot of excess violence. The quality of their stuff is going to be bad. People are going to die from it because there's going to be no quality control.
Absolutely.
Everyone knows that story.
Yes.
And absolutely refuses to learn it for anything else except alcohol between 1919 and 1933.
Yes.
Ken Burns made a fucking documentary about prohibition.
I saw it. It was amazing.
Perfectly fine. It's Ken Burns documentary. You know, it's always going to be at least so good. And it was. Nick Gillespie from Reason interviews him, and he's like, so, and this is like, I don't know, when did that come out? 8 years ago, 7 years ago, something like that. So, is there any other like commonly used substance that is currently illegal, creating a lot of black markets, that you could see as being kind of, you know, a parallel story where we could learn some of the lessons? Like, what are the contemporary lessons that your documentary has for society? And Ken Burns like, yeah, no. You know, mostly for me, it's about like why the Tea Party really has a bad idea with being like single issue fanatics.
Wow.
And it's like, no, dude. The answer is pot.
Yeah, exactly.
It's really easy.
Yes.
It's pot.
Yes.
It's obvious.
Just give the answer.
The answer is pot. And he
yes.
even was like, no, I don't think pot really qualifies. Like, no, that's what it is.
Yes.
When tens of millions of people do a thing that other people have decided was a bad thing and is illegal, but they keep doing it anyways. No matter what, they keep doing it.
Yes.
And the rich people and the
in fact, you get more people doing it. His documentary showed that drinking went up.
Yes,
It went up. So my point is, if you want kids to floss, outlaw flossing. You will literally have kids with the best oral hygiene you've ever had in the world. Just outlaw it. They'll be doing it all the time.
And how many times have we heard, like, if even one kid dies, it's like, dude, you have just outlawed the most effective smoking cessation thing ever invented.
Yep.
You just outlawed that.
Yes. Absolutely. I completely agree. Yes.
No, it's distressing how often. I mean, Reason's been around since 1968, like you and I have, and part of the joy is to go back through the archives and read, 10 years ago and 20 years ago, and 30 years ago,
Sure.
and like, man, some arguments you got to keep coming back to.
Yes.
Jesus, how many times do we have to tell you people about why prohibition is bad? And the answer is, you have an ass like Cuomo, you have an ass like Trump, and they come to the same conclusion.
They do.
Shouldn't that tell you something?
Yes.
The guy who ran the commercials about why he needs to be reelected governor because of Donald Trump totally agrees with Donald Trump about this idiot thing.
Absolutely.
Maybe that's a time to step back. It's frustrating.
Let's grab a call if we could. I want to grab a call if I could real fast. This is Bo from Virginia. Bo, how are you? Bo, are you there? Hey, Bo, are you there?
Bo from Virginia.
Yeah. Hey, what's going on, Bo?
Turn down your radio, Bo.
I'm doing great.
Yep,
Talk to me.
Well, I kind of had a question for Mr. Welch here. We're doing some of these regional markets for media markets.
Mm-hmm.
Some of them are a little bit smaller, some are a little bit bigger. How do we build our relationships better with journalists at the lower, kind of medium to smaller market level?
Are you talking as a party? Are you talking as a candidate? What are you talking about, Bo?
General activism.
As an activist.
And it could apply to all of those things.
So you're asking, if I'm clear, you're saying, how does a libertarian activist or Libertarian Party member kind of have a better relationship with local media? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome.
Booze is always the answer. To touch on what we were talking about before. No, I mean, it's like this. Even if you're a 23-year-old kid just getting into journalism or getting into podcasting or anything else, what's the first thing that you do? You find out everybody who is doing that thing in the areas of expertise that are of interest to you. You follow all of them on Twitter. When they write something of interest, you respond to them, or you say, if it's particularly good, hey, that was good, or hey, I know this thing about your thing that might be of interest. Depending on what kind of size of organization you have, or whether other overlapping organizations that you might be part of, you invite them to your things. You invite yourself to come over to talk to them about areas that they have a demonstrated interest in, and that you have demonstrated knowledge and relevant knowledge in. And that's a lot of conditionals right there. And I say that on purpose because you do not want to waste anybody's time. You don't want to be gray ponytail guy at the Ralph Nader press conference from the local Alt Weekly, back when we still held Alt Weeklies, God bless them all. You don't want to be the person who single issues someone to death with a half crazy look in your eyes about how we got to get rid of all private property or get rid of all government or whatever, even though you might believe any of those things strongly. You want to know what they need and how you can furnish something that either they haven't thought of or actually is some kind of interesting piece of information or connects them to some kind of interesting piece of information. But the first step is just knowing who's doing stuff, who's blogging, who's tweeting, who's the TV reporter, who's out in the field covering X, Y, and Z. find out their names, follow what they do, and interact with them. Just that process of information gathering will make you twice as effective as you were before. And from there, you can figure out a more kind of outreach sort of social interaction thing.
I would add to that. You really want to be politely persistent. Right? You don't just want to send something off and go, that guy didn't respond to me. What a jerk. You don't want to be that guy, right? You want to be politely persistent.
Well, that's just your people who are like that with me. Yeah. It's not you personally.
That's correct. Yes. Right? You want them to be polite and all of a sudden, send something out a week or once a month or be politely persistent, but something else. And it's going to sound crazy, but write the story for them. Literally give them a press release that is the story. They could literally pick it up and cut and paste it if they want to do with 3 tweaks. Send them a photo. Write the story for them. When it comes to local media, if you can send them the actual story with the photo and do it politely and consistently, you'll be shocked how all of a sudden one of your stories will be in something when it's a slow news day or something happens to fit or something happens to work. To Matt's point, try to stay on the similar point with specific people. If this guy covers politics, don't send him stuff about the latest sports team, right? Send him or her the stuff that they usually cover. So every once in a while when they need something, they might actually reach out to you. Next piece to think about, you can use social media. Right to Matt's point, you can reach out and send stuff to them that way, talk to them that way, go back and forth. It's amazing how often that I would all of a sudden out of nowhere get an article that I had no idea I would get because I've been reaching out to this person, or I did, my team was, for literally 3 or 4 months. Once a month, every 3 weeks, couple of weeks, send them something. And before you know it, boom, something's up there. And it's the photo we gave them. And it's basically the press release that we gave them with a couple of tweaks to it. It does happen here or there. And if they get a good response to it, they'll come back to you again. So you want to be able to do that. And the other thing that Matt said, which is totally on board, constantly invite them to things. If you're doing events, invite them. The worst they can do is ignore it. But once in a while, they'll show up. I remember one time during a campaign, I went to an event in Steuben County, and I had 3 different news crews show up. Randomly, because it happened to be a slow news week at the right place at the right time, and I got video and I got newspaper all in one event. Next event, nobody's there. So it just happened to happen. So I would say what Matt said, plus persistent, polite persistence, plus doing the work for them when appropriate, and you'll see sometimes you'll get rewarded. Was that helpful, Bo?
That's probably one of the more refreshing things I've heard about activism in a long time. So thank you guys. Appreciate the insight. And, Steuben County did pretty well for you in your governor's race, I believe.
Absolutely, they did.
Keep going after those twin tiers.
100%, brother. 100%. The Southern tier was good to me. Absolutely it was. Thank you. So, yes.
All right. Talk to you.
I appreciate it. Look, guys, I want to say thank you so much for supporting the show. Head over to sharpeway.com. Head over to patreon.com/sharpeway. Support if you want to see this happen. If you like the ability to reach out to me, to talk and to get some real answers, and to have someone not just give you the, we got to be better, to actually tell you what's going on, someone who cares and is trying to move this movement forward, please support us. Patreon.com/sharpeway. We really need your help. Please do it. I want to say thank you to Matt Welch so much. I appreciate it. Sir. It's amazing you came by. Thank you for some great conversation, and hopefully I can bug you again. You'll come back soon.
You bet.
All right. Thank you. Guys, thank you so much. I will see you next week right here, 8 p.m. Eastern on The Sharpe Way.